Today is December 10th.
10th, right. Okay, it's December 10th, Westtown Township Historical Commission. We're here today to interview Bob Woodman, who lived in the township as a youth until he went to college. And I'm Dave Walter, and I'm assisted by Steve Warhaftig. We're members of the Historical Commission. So,
And where are we doing this, conducting this interview?
the interview is being conducted at Westminster Presbyterian Church on West Pleasant Grove Road. Bob, when did you first move to Westtown, and how old were you, and what were the circumstances of your moving here?
We moved here in '53. I was 8 years old, and the reason why we moved here was my father took over managing the farm at that time it was the epileptic hospital, and he ran that farm, and we provided products to the hospital for quite some time.
Okay, you lived in a house on East Pleasant Grove Road, the stone house. It's across from the entrance to the lower athletic fields, is that right?
Yes, it was. The barn was on the north side of Pleasant Grove Road, and the house was a large stone house right along Pleasant Grove Road. It was built in 1791, and before we moved in, my father came into the house and did some renovation, and one of the things he did was in the living room, he sanded the floor down to get to the bare wood. He said there were 7 layers of paint. So he had run a floor sander. He said basically he'd start it up and shut it off because it would gum up the belt so bad with all that paint. But the floors came up to be beautiful. They were 12-inch plank that were pegged to the joists, and they finished up just beautiful.
That house is still there, and I
Right.
believe it was renovated maybe 10 years ago. But right next to the house is still exists the creamery.
Right.
So I assume that while you were there in residence, the farm still had dairy cows in the
We
barn.
had dairy cows.
Can you tell us about that?
We milked, I think it wasn't a big herd, maybe, I'm thinking maybe about a dozen cattle. And at that time, we would put the milk in the 10-gallon milk cans that were kind of everywhere at that point. And we'd take them down to the creamery, and there was a large tank with chilled water in it. We'd submerge the cans in that. And I know my dad made butter for the hospital, but he ended up making so much butter, they said, stop making the butter. And at some point we were selling the milk to H's Dairy in town. And I remember there was a platform that was built along Pleasant Grove Road that was the height of a flatbed truck. And we would put the cans up there on the day that they were to pick them up, and they would slide them onto the flatbed truck and haul them into H's Dairy.
Yeah, that barn was torn down, I guess, after you...
It burned.
It burned.
Right.
For years, the foundation was the edge of the basketball court. But I think the recent renovations over there have completely eliminated that.
Pardon me, but where exactly was this hospital?
It was 140 acres at the corner of East Pleasant Grove and South Concord Road.
Right.
It's basically where Gaudenza is today.
But south of most of the property that was a farm was south of Pleasant Grove Road,
Which is now
and butted up to Marshall Jones's farm.
So that's half of where the Pleasant Grove residential community is
Correct.
today.
Correct.
I know you mentioned to me earlier that Marshall Jones
Yeah.
at an airfield. Can you tell us about what you saw?
It was just basically grass, and he had a Piper Cub that was yellow, so you could see it everywhere. And he would take off and land on that strip, and he kept the plane in, I don't know if it was actually the barn, but there was a building there that had a large door that opened, and he would push the plane back into the barn. But you'd see him take off and land every once in a while. And we could see it from the house, from the back porch of the house, we could see him coming and going.
So you were there starting when you were 8 years old.
Right.
Where did you go to elementary school?
Initially, it was the Pleasant Grove School, which is at the corner of 202 and East Pleasant Grove Road. And I went there for third and part of fourth, and it was way overcrowded. So they built the West Town Thornbury School. Now it's down on Westbourne Road, and they moved us down there, and I think it was too small the day it opened. So they ended up putting an addition on it within a year.
The Pleasant Grove School became the township building and the police station, I
Right.
believe, when I moved here.
Right.
And then that was torn down a number of years ago. And is that where there's a daycare or something?
Yeah, it's I guess it's a nursery school daycare, but and at that time that was there, I'm thinking it was the 202 was still 2-lane road, and it was after that that it became 4-lane.
And
So-
you remember when the bypass was built in
Yeah.
1954, but it ended where it ends today.
Correct.
And then 202 was 2 lanes from here
2
to
lanes,
Delaware.
and then right all the way down, and then they made it a 4-lane.
We have photos of the road widening, which apparently was a very big effort
Oh yeah.
to do. So you recall that?
Well, as a kid, we were fascinated watching the machines work, but we weren't really making the connection that it was going to be a 4-lane road. But yeah, we didn't see too much because we were not that close to the road. But we once in a while would walk up there and watch them work. So,
When did your father's association with the epileptic hospital end?
I think it was about 56. The hospital decided that they didn't want to maintain the farm, so they put it out for lease, and we did not have the funds to lease it, so we moved out, and Clarence McCardle and his family moved in to the 1791 house, and they lived there for I don't know how long, but I remember working when I was in high school, helping him on summer jobs baling hay. So they were there for quite some time.
Was the hospital a state operation, or was it a private hospital?
I really don't know. I remember being there, and there were at least 3 patients that came down from the hospital to work as farmhands. And there was one man whose only responsibility was taking care of the chickens. And he'd come down every day, gather the eggs, scatter feed, but those suckers would always get out. And they'd end up underneath the corn crib, eating the corn that would drop off. And at one point we got a border collie, and he seemed to think it was his job to keep the chickens back in the pen, so he would herd them back into the pen, and they got so they'd see him coming, they'd all run for the chicken house.
So the chickens provided eggs for the
Yeah,
hospital's
actually.
patients, and
Eggs, we didn't, well, actually, we got some pullets one time, and in that there was a couple of roosters, and we butchered the roosters for our own use, well, not for the hospital, but The chickens provided eggs, yeah.
So the farm had a dozen dairy cows, chickens,
Pigs
pigs,
and turkeys.
turkey.
Wow.
That's a lot of acreage. Was there corn grown or wheat?
Corn, we didn't grow wheat, we grew corn and alfalfa for hay for the cattle, but primarily just those two crops.
Wow.
Was there any concern on the part of people, residents of the township, about having a hospital like that?
Not that I know, but
No.
we just took it as a matter of fact, and there wasn't really nothing made about it. It was just there.
And they were neighbors of the mansion.
Yes, and do you ever recall wandering around up by the Oakbourne mansion? And
We would go by there on tractors pretty frequently, but we never went in on the property. It was kind of our understanding that it was off limits, so we didn't sneak on there, no.
yeah, it was a convalescent home for women till after you.
Yeah, I remember
grew
that,
up.
you say that, yes.
Um,
But there was a hayfield up on top of the hill there, basically where the athletic fields are now. And there was the road that went up past the barn, went through the hospital, down over the hill and came up on Oakbourne Road, right at that 90-degree curve. And we had another hayfield, it was up on the other side of that, so we would go through there.
We have some pictures from the epileptic hospital, in the early 1900s, and there's a main building, I guess, where there was an infirmary and
Right.
administrative office, and then there was a woman's dorm and a men's dorm. And none of those three buildings are there any longer. Do you recall, were they there when you
Yes,
lived
actually,
there?
we lived in one for about a year, I think, because when they leased the farm off and we had to get out, we rented rooms in one of the buildings until our home was built. We built a home on Goodman Lane, and so while that was being built, we lived at one of the hospital buildings that was empty at that time.
Do you recall when they were torn down?
I do not.
Because I believe none of the buildings at Gaudenzia today were part of the hospital. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. When Gaudenzia was first there, the buildings were still intact. I'm not sure when they tore them down.
Yeah, for a period in the mid-60s, there was John Knox Junior College attempted to use the building as a junior college, and that failed, and then Gaudenzia took over. Now, when your family built a house on Goodwin,
Mm-hmm.
Where did you go to middle school and high school?
Well, we didn't have middle school. We had junior high.
Yeah, I remember junior high.
So when I graduated from Westtown Thornbury, junior high was in where Henderson is now, and I was there for 1 year, and they built Stetson, and then I went to Stetson for 8th and 9th, and went to high school at Henderson.
When they built Stetson, we understand that used to be maybe an airfield where they picked up airmail. That was probably before your time.
That was before my time. I don't remember that.
So thinking about 202, which I'm sure you went up and down many times, there was a store at the corner called Bartram's Market,
Yep.
where the Amish market is today.
Yep.
What can you tell us about Bartram's?
Well, I worked there from, I think I was a junior in high school until I graduated from college. Worked there part-time. And it was managed by the Johnson brothers. We would go over to Bartram's Orchard, over past Westtown School to pick up loads of apples to bring back, and we also took loads of apples to get crushed and pressed into cider. But that was a pretty active place at the time. We there was a big walk-in cooler that we kept produce and sodas, eggs, and their big thing was the apples. They were really, and we but they also had some groceries, but that was a pretty small part of the ice cream was big. We had Valley Madison ice cream, if you remember that. And so that was there until it was taken over by somebody, and they were coating the floor with some kind of, I don't know what it was, but apparently it was volatile. And one of the freezers kicked on and set the whole place on fire and burned it down.
What year was that?
It was, see, I was living in my house over here in Birmingham then, so it would have been probably about 78 to 80.
So it burnt down, then that corner was not occupied until Acme went in there with the new
Right.
market and
Yeah, they dug
late
that down.
80s, I think it was.
They dug that all out and leveled it off for the Acme and whatever markets there were. So
Now that intersection of Street Road and 202 was known as Darlington's Corner.
right.
Do you recall any of the other businesses that were on that corner?
Well, the southeast corner was a motel, and it was run by parents of a schoolmate of mine, it was Eddie Miller. And that was, I'm not sure when that had folded. The other corner was the gas station and service station where the CVS is now. It was a Esso station. And then next to Barker's was a little restaurant, and then a Sunoco station.
And across the street was the Darlington Inn,
Uh,
the northwest corner.
no, it was is that what that building
Right.
was? Yeah, it was just
that
a house as
house,
far as
yeah.
we knew.
Right.
And that
Well,
loop that was, a loop road that goes in there, at one time was Wellington Pike.
Right.
And there was like, 3 or 4, at least 4 or 5 houses in there. And one of the houses was a boy that was a couple of years younger than me, and he also worked at the market.
We have some reports had said that some people claimed that the market had no heat and it was uncomfortable in the wintertime.
Well, there was no heat out where the apple storage was. And I don't recall it not having heat while I was there. But, that might have been we might have got heat from the freezers.
Now, that corner where you said the motel was, there's that dentist office. of the
Right,
old
I
store.
think that house
that
is the
was
original
there.
house
Yeah.
that was there when the motel was there.
Is that where the blacksmith shop was?
Next
way
to
back
it,
when?
and Brenton lived in that house for a while. But yes, there was a blacksmith and a wheelwright, and that moved. It had to move over to where the inn was.
Did you have any contact with the Robinsons and Craybilly Farm at all?
No.
No.
Well, I shouldn't say no. When I was commuting to Drexel, Mr. Robinson rode the train with us.
Okay, so you went off to Drexel. I guess by the time you were here, the trolley line on Westchester Pike had been abandoned.
I remember the
1954.
track still being there, but I don't think the trolley was still running.
1954 was the
Yeah.
end of that.
And they
So-
ripped those all that up.
So you took the train into
From
Drexel,
Westtown, yeah.
got off at 30th Street.
Correct,
Okay.
So that was from the Westtown train station?
yeah. It started in Westchester, and there was a station in Oakbourne, which was along Oakbourne Road there. I don't think it was actually being used at the time I was riding it, but Westtown was pretty busy. We'd probably get like 20 people get on when I got on.
And the Oakbourne station was used until 1961, so when did you start going to Drexel?
65 through 69, 64 through 69.
No, you were there about the same time I was. And the train from Westchester went right by it was in a tunnel underneath Drexel, and if you were
Right.
down in the basement, you could hear the train go by.
Yeah, and then it would come up on the 30th Street.
Right.
So.
And originally it ended at 31st in Chestnut, right there by where
Right.
Drexel was started.
But they were rough rides. There was the old red cars that were electrified, but boy, they were rough.
Why do you say they were rough?
You'd bounce around. You basically couldn't read. They were so,
Really?
yeah.
It's about the way it is today. And then you had to change in media, right? Get
Yeah,
off
you had
that
to
train
change-
and get on another train.
Right.
And
And then I remember we figured out which were the smoother cars because there was like a torsion bar on the side of the truck that made it ride smoother. If you got the old ones with just the leaf springs, you're in for a real wild ride.
thrills of commuting.
Yes, it was. That made me decide I didn't want to work in the city.
Do you remember a lot of the roads in Westtown not being paved with asphalt yet, or?
Not really. I don't. Well, being that age, we were much on the farm, and so I'm pretty sure Pleasant Road was paved, and the road up
South Concord.
South Concord was paved, and the road that went through the farm up over and through the hospital was all paved.
So the farm output, did the farm output get sold and transported elsewhere as well?
No,
or
it's
just
still
local?
there. That's what's there now. The
Oh.
stone.
Well, what I mean is the food that you produced,
Oh.
was it
No,
sent
we
elsewhere?
took it up to, the hospital had a large cold storage room, and we would put the eggs and butter and stuff like that in there until they decided they didn't want to have that, and then we sold the milk to H's. But the farmhouse is the house that's there now. And that was quite a house. I mean, I think the walls were like 18 and 24 inches thick stone, and there was a fireplace in the living room, dining room, and upstairs and 2 bedrooms, so it was built into the corner. And when we first moved in, there was a coal furnace in the basement, and it sat under a grate that had an open grate on the first floor and one on the second floor, so the heat would just rise up through that. And when my father renovated, he not only sanded the living room floors, but there was some old cabinetry in the kitchen. The kitchen was the whole width of the house, and it had a huge fireplace that you could walk in. So I assume that at the early days that was where they did the cooking, and so we had to shovel coal every once in a while, and then they got rid of that and went to a oil-fired furnace, but it was still convection, nothing distributed.
So you'd have to get coal deliveries.
Yes.
In the old days.
Yeah.
Was that,
Fortunately,
that was
that
by
didn't
truck?
last too long while we were there, maybe a year or so.
And that came up by truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, did the hospital itself have a powerhouse?
There was some kind of facility up there. I don't know. I think it might have been steam generating for the heating of the hospital, as far as I know. It wasn't providing electric or anything like that.
Because I know I've walked the grounds looking for the remains of those 3 buildings, and where the barn was, I remember it was just the foundation, but there's a trail that goes on up the hill that ends up by the mansion. And in the woods there's some sort of a old structure, maybe made of cinder blocks or cement. Was that where the powerhouse was, or is that?
No, I was thinking it
something
was up
else?
on top of the hill.
That's what I had been told by
Yeah.
the township, but there's some remains of something in the woods there between the old barn foundation and as you go up the hill.
I couldn't tell you, I don't know. I know the barn, I really loved the barn. I was really devastated when it burned. And we had a single silo that was a masonry silo. And the fun part of it was there was actually a coop in the peak of one of the wings of the building that pigeons kept. That's where the pigeons lived. So I would go up there and try to sneak up and catch the pigeons. Wasn't too successful.
When did, the barn, when did it burn?
I think it was a year there were several barns that were torched.
Okay, so it was arson, it wasn't spontaneous combustion?
I believe it was arson, and it was like a year after the other ones burned. There was the Zug farm on Johnny's Way was torched, and there was another one in West Goshen Township that belonged to Supplee, and we actually went over there during the night, several nights, guarding that during the night, and we did that. He guarded that for about a year, and not long after he stopped guarding it, it went.
Did they ever catch the arsonist?
Not that I know
So who did you think you were probably guarding it from?
of. Or an arsonist.
But I mean, was this just something malicious or
Well,
for
I'll
fun?
tell you my theory.
Yeah.
I think it was hired by developers. Because when those barns burned, the farm was no longer viable. They were sold off and houses were built, both of them. West End's, the one at Oakburn, I guess the township took over at some point.
70s, yeah. Well, we can't accuse the developers, and probably the statute of limitations has run out, but.
Well, that was my theory.
In 1950, Westtown only had about 900 population.
Right.
And it wasn't long after the development started. Do you remember developments going up and what it was like? Was there a lot of protests, or did people
No, there
just?
wasn't any protests that I can recall. But the first developments I'm aware of was along 202, not back in the main part of the township. It was Garden Circle, Goodwin Lane, and that area. And then there was a part that was built north of Oakbourne Road later.
North of Oakbourne, okay. Between Oakbourne and the township line there with West Goshen.
You're right, yeah.
And then Pleasant Grove was built in the late 70s.
Let me think. Yep, that's probably right, about the late 70s. Because I was out of college and working when that started going up.
So Westtown sort of exploded after 1950, and one farm after another became.
The farms didn't, I don't recall the farms being gobbled up until the latter part. When we were still living there in the 60s, there was not that much development going on that I recall.
So you basically lived in Westtown from
Third
8
grade
years
to-
old till you graduated from Drexel.
Right.
So what was it like for a young child and a teenager and, you don't have to tell me about the mischief you got into.
Oh,
but
gee, that was the best
basically,
part.
what did you do for fun when you weren't studying or working at the?
Well,
the
when
barn
I was
or-
living, well, when we were on the farm, I was with my dad working on the farm. He taught me to drive the tractor and had me, most of my job was disking after they plowed. I remember
Disking?
disking, pulling a disc to, it broke up the ground from after plowing. And I know we had one large field down that was right up against Marshall Jones's property. And my mom said she would stand on the porch, she'd see the tractor going back and forth, and it looked like nobody was driving it. Because I was that small. It was a Ford 8N, I remember that. What were we talking about? I forgot.
Well, how about as a teenage years? Was there township dances?
Well, no.
There was that grist mill down at Westtown School was supposedly a community center for a number of years.
Well, for those of us that lived out on this end of the township, that was pretty much inaccessible.
Okay.
And mostly what we did was, if there's an empty lot, we were either playing ball on it or building something or digging a hole.
Did you go up into Westchester much?
Actually, a couple of times we did hitchhike into Westchester, and then when we were in high school, we were bused up to the high school. So, but as far as social stuff, not really.
Just local.
There wasn't any girl next door you dated or anything?
Oh, geez,
That you could tell us
you're not
about?
gonna give this to my wife, are you? There was a couple of them I'd like to, that were really cute girls, but I think they're out of my league.
I wanted to ask about the Marshall Jones again. You mentioned his airplane. Why did he have one?
Hobby.
Just a hobby.
Yeah, he
not,
used
not
to
for
fly
business.
around out of the world. A friend of mine's father knew him, lived on Concord Road, just down from him, and said he would fly in fog like this we're having today. He would fly low enough that he could follow a straight road. And he said there was one day he was flying along a straight road, and there was another guy doing the same thing coming in the opposite direction. But he was kind of a township character, I would say. His brother Russell had the bigger farm over near Westtown School, and he was more of the gentleman. Marshall was kind of the township character.
And why do you say that?
Well, because one time he had a dead dog in the back of his pickup that he had run over and hadn't gotten around to burying it yet. And his son had a pet barn owl, so he would go over to the barn and shoot rats, put them in the freezer, and then feed them to the owl. He said, he told us that Marshall told us he used to have an ice cream guy delivered, and he'd just go in the garage and open up the freezer and put the ice cream in until one day one of the rats fell out and they never saw him again.
Was this Marshall Jones Sr., Jr., or the third? There's three more.
It would have been senior.
Okay. They moved here in 1913, as I recall.
Yeah, he was a wild man. I think what I recall mostly is that he was mostly cropping at that point. There was not much cattle on there. But we would go down there and swim in his pond every once in a while, and you'd have to get out and knock the leeches off your legs or something like that. And then when it froze over in the winter, the ducks and geese would keep this one hole open, but we would skate around it. And I remember one Christmas Eve, it was really cold, and we went over skating at night. It was my friend and my sister, and my sister went into the hole. We had to drag her out. and get back to the house.
This is the pond that was over where Ruston High School is today?
No, this is the
The
one that
stock-
was down, off Street Road. I guess it's not there anymore. It was just the regular farm pond, it was there for Marshall's, farm.
Where Tower Course Drive is, it goes into Pleasant Grove in that area?
Well, it was on
There's
his
a
property,
stream
so
there,
it
Taylor's
would have been
Run,
below
yeah.
I don't know where Tower Course Road is, but there was a pond down there, it had an island, so it was,
So when you were a kid, Westtown was still very rural, a lot of
yeah,
farmland.
it was mostly farms when we first got here.
And very little retail. So when it came time to buy things, clothing, gifts, stuff like that, did you have to go into 69th Street or
No,
down
we
to
usually went
Delaware?
to Westchester. Friday night in Westchester was a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And there was not as many restaurants as there is and more stores. There was W.T. Grant, F.W. Woolworth, there was Marcellus department store, Benson's department store. They're all gone now.
A movie theater?
Yep, Warner, yep. And there was another one on Gay Street that was smaller than the Warner. And this kind of sounds weird to say, but most of the black kids went to the Gay Street Theater.
Yeah, when you were in junior high, was it still segregated then?
No, it was not. But it,
Because the black elementary school was where the Westchester Borough Hall and Police Station is, I believe.
yeah, that was called the Market Street School, and there was a High Street School, which is where the Burger King is or was.
Okay.
But it was, most of the kids that went to Westtown Thornbury, there was, I don't recall any black kids. But, we went to junior high, it was where everybody was bused to, so it was integrated at that point.
Did your family attend any church around here? Where was
We
that?
initially went to the Methodist church in town, and it was about when I was in high school, we came out and went to Dilworthtown Presbyterian.
Okay. Do you have any recollection at all of the old black church that used to be on Little Shiloh Road
No,
at Shiloh?
I did not.
Because that was supposedly still somewhat intact in the 1950s. You basically didn't get into that end of the township
No.
much. You were focused on the 202 corridor.
right.
So would you go down to Dilworthtown for anything?
Go to Dilworthtown for that? We
Yeah.
went to church there,
Oh, you went to church there.
yeah.
Yeah, that church is still there.
Well, it's not a church anymore.
No,
It's a Montessori school.
Montessori school, right. It was connected with this church for a while.
Right. Well, when we went there, it was kind of on its own. It was independent of anybody else, but, my first marriage was there, and my two sons were baptized there.
In Westtown itself, was there any restaurant or?
Just the one next to Bartram's.
And that was what, like a little diner or something like that?
It was, yeah, and I guess not, it wasn't in the township, but the Birmingham Grill was where the
Right.
Cadillac dealer is.
Right.
But that little restaurant it was tiny. It was probably, I know they had a bar, and then probably not more than about 8 or 10 tables. But
When you say bar, you don't mean alcohol, you mean like a counter.
Yeah, like a
Because
counter.
Westtown
yeah,
was
counter.
dry,
It's-
right?
Right, oh yeah, it was dry.
So if you guys wanted to sneak beer, you had to go into Westchester.
Well, I remember when we were working at Bartram's, they made a really good chicken salad sandwich, so we'd go over there once in a while, get a chicken salad sandwich. But it was really small. And that's the only food establishment I remember ever getting near.
So again, at the other end of the township, you had Westchester Pike cut through. You basically didn't go over that way.
Not, yeah, very rarely.
Yeah.
Anytime we get close to that was when we went over to Bartram's Orchard to pick up fruit.
The Barton's Orchard is where, I think there's still a barn there. And they came out to Westtown in about 1700, and they lived in a cave or a house built into the side of the hill. Did you ever hear any stories about that when you were at the orchard? Or?
I remember Hid Bartram he'd come to the store once in a while, bring stuff in or something, and he was one of the first people I knew ever heard of having open heart surgery back in, it would have been the early 60s, I guess. So that was a big deal when we found out that he had open heart surgery.
There was another orchard, Highland Orchards, off of Chester Road. Did you ever?
I don't recall
that's
that.
A housing development now. I guess that's in West Coast.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So Westtown had orchards, it had some dairy cows, grew a lot of corn.
Some beef cattle being raised.
Beef cow.
And I remember
a lot of farming.
When Robinson had their carriage, 4-horse carriage with the matched 4 black horses, he used to, occasionally we'd see him riding around the roads, but he would compete at the Devon Horse Show.
Right.
So you would see them sometimes on the roads.
Yeah, that was part of the competition. Apparently, as the horses had to be able to deal with traffic or passing cars on the road, so they would take them out and ride them around or so on.
Did that seem strange when you saw these old-fashioned?
We thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful, beautiful carriage, and the horses were just magnificent.
Well, apparently the collection was world-renowned.
Yeah, it was over 100 carriages. But all the farms were mechanized then. You still didn't have any horses.
No, we didn't. Well, there was one farm that was on the southwest corner of Concord Road and Street Road. And they had a team of horses, and you could see them collecting loose, they only used them for collecting loose hay. And it was like a big event when we would see them working those horses.
Wow. Unreal. Well, do you have any other remembrances you'd like to share?
I really enjoyed living and working that farm. I was really sad to see it go, and I was really sad to see the barn go.
So when you started going into school at Drexel, and people knew that you lived out here in West Town, was the perception that you're like a farm boy, or you're from farmland, or was it already perceived as a
I don't think the
suburb?
people that went to Drexel knew anything about West Town or farming or anything like that. A lot of them were city kids and that, so it was never even brought up, I think. But I think that's my experience being on the farm influenced my decision to be a mechanical engineer, because we were working around the machines all the time. And so yeah, I credit that with the reason why I chose the career I did.
Yeah, I recall my biggest shock going to Drexel was meeting kids from the city, because it was so much different than what we experienced out here.
And the kids from Southfield, they were a different language.
Yeah.
People outside of the township, if you mention Westtown, they'll often just think of the school, and they'll think of
Right.
the Quaker tradition,
If they think of anything.
if they think of anything. And so, did the presence of Quakers and the Quaker tradition factor into any of your daily life? Did you meet many Quakers, or was
Well,
that
my
really
father
just
grew
the
up as a
school?
Quaker, so, yes.
Oh, your father
Yeah.
did?
His family was Quaker from Bucks County. He was kind of not Quaker at that point. Because we came from Virginia, so down there, you were Southern Baptist or nothing. And then when we came up here, I guess we just chose the Methodist church because it was where my parents liked it. So my mother grew up Methodist. That's probably the reason, now that I think about it.
So if we were to ask you, what are the one or two things that you miss that's gone in Westtown Township, what would you say?
The farms, the first place, and Martram's Market. Had good memories of that. Enjoyed working there. I think those two come to mind first.
What was great about that market?
Read about the market? It was kind of like a local, because we grew the produce in Westtown Township. It was and the Bartrams owned it. It was kind of like a local thing. And you got to know, there were people that would come in there every day, either to get a paper. I remember one guy who would always come in, walk into the walk-in cooler, come out with a soda, stand there at the counter talking and drinking the soda. And we had a little bowl next to the cash register, and if people got a paper or something small, they just threw the money in the bowl. And if you know the change, you took the change out of the bowl. So it was kind of different.
That's a different situation.
Yes, but it was kind of a local thing, and people from this local area patronized that pretty regularly. And then we had a lot of people coming down 202 that would just stop in.
And that's where you would hear the gossip and stories of what was going on in the township? Not so much?
Not so much. And it was just, how you doing, and that kind of thing.
Of course, they might not have been sharing gossip with a teenager.
That's true.
Between Bartram's and the
Right.
diner next door, that's probably where everything was done.
Right.
Where was the township building then? Where did they meet?
I'm not sure there was one, was there, if you say
Maybe
that.
not. Where did they meet, I wonder?
I don't remember there being a township building until they took over the school when the school moved out, and then I guess they built that building that they are now.
That was a beautiful building, the
Oh,
old
the school,
township.
old school?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
some of the stones for that still exist at a house on Paoli Pike. But, well, who provided the police protection in those days? Was it state
There was
police?
The only one I remember is, I just can't think of his name now, but there was like I guess they call him a constable, who, one guy for the whole township.
Huh.
Wow.
Wow.
Gosh, I can't think of his name.
No wonder we couldn't prevent the arson.
Right.
Yeah, so 202 was probably patrolled by the state police.
State police, right.
And then the rest of the township, you'd have a constable.
Right, and the state police never came into the township that I ever recall ever seeing. Never saw a state police car.
It'd be interesting to find out where the township supervisors met, probably in a room at a school somewhere, but
Probably.
which
or church.
one, who knows? Huh. Well, do we know anybody that was in the township? Maybe Elaine Adler would know, but,
Or
wow.
maybe our old records would show.
Yeah, the old township minutes or something.
So that could be.
See, we come out of these interviews with more work to do than we ever go.
Get more questions than answers.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, it sounds like it was a bucolic atmosphere and a great place to grow up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Did you know the Schlonsteins or the Orvis Orchard people? It was right across from the church here at,
Orvis? Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, Dr. Orvis was my doctor for a while.
Because that house stood until, what, 4 or 5 years ago. The house right up here where
Yeah.
the daycare center is today.
So that's why they named that the
Orvis
cutoff
Drive.
road
Right, that's right,
after them.
yes. Well, thank you, Bob. There's nothing else. Do you have any more
No,
questions?
no,
Steve?
this
I'm surprised I
has been
remembered
terrific.
as much as I did.
Yeah, well.
Well, you never know what comes out, but this has been a great interview, and we're going to be editing it and sharing it with the community. Thank you very much.
I just saw something, we
Oh,
were
good.
talking about the raising the turkeys. The turkeys were on the upper floor of a machinery shed. It had a big stairwell that went up. But you had to make noise when you came in on the bottom and kind of stomp your feet up the steps, or else the turkeys would go berserk if you ever showed up there by surprise.
And what would that be like if they went crazy?
They would just all be flying around and squawking and carrying on like crazy. And part of the deal we had with the hospital for raising the turkeys was my father got to choose one for our table. He found the biggest turkey I've ever seen. I think it weighed 30 pounds. And we had a small stove at that point. And I remember him pulling out the base it, and it was on, it had to take all the racks out. It wouldn't fit without it. He pulled it out and got on the door, and the whole stove started to go.
Oh boy! So when you sold the turkeys, would you whose job was it to butcher them and?
They shipped them off sometime.
Oh, so you shipped them live.
Yeah.
Now,
So you could avoid.
where would you buy groceries in those days? Was there a butcher shop on 202 or a grocery store?
I'm thinking it was in town, but I'm not sure at this point where it would be. Because anything like that, we'd go into town for and do stuff. Oh, you know where it was? It was the food fair.
The food fair.
It was
Oh, in Westchester.
on Gay Street. Like, it was like next to where the police station is now.
You can see exactly where it is because food fairs always had a tower.
Big tower.
Oh,
And that's still there.
That's where the church thrift shop is now, back in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Where Graham's Diner.
Yeah.
Restaurant.
And the other thing I remember about that area was in '58, there was a huge blizzard, like snow up to here. And they used that parking lot to land helicopters.
Really?
And they somehow finagled with Boeing to use their Chinooks that were ready to fly. And I remember going up there, when we could finally get out, we went up there to get supplies and watch the Chinooks land in the parking lot.
And why were they landing?
They were dropping people off that had to go to a hospital or something like that.
Oh.
That was the biggest open area that had a paved parking lot, and I could think of.
Wow.
That was I remember that storm. It was quite a deal, but, so it sounds like Westtown in those days, you needed a car.
Oh, absolutely.
To go get
Anything.
most of your basics, except you could walk to Bartram's and pick up the Daily Local or the Inquirer or the Bulletin or whatever.
What I remember about that '58 storm was we didn't get plowed out for several days, but everybody dug from both sides of we were on Goodwood Lane, and everybody dug a path to the center of the street, and then we all dug so there was one path that went the length of the Goodwood Lane, and with spokes coming off it from each house.
Oh,
It's like a comic strip.
yeah, great. Well, good, well, thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Thank you very
Enjoyed
much.
learning.
Terrific.
I'm sure our listeners and other township residents will love hearing some of these stories.
It's a great addition to our legacy.